All right. Good afternoon, everybody. More answers for Quora. We have Ahmad Imran. Ask who or what groups constitute as Noahides in today's modern world. I'm back in my regular car. I could wear my hat to look a little bit more rabbinical. Anyway, the this is a difficult question to answer because there are various groups and various terminologies of what it means Noahide or Bnei Noach, Ben Noach, the children of Noah. First of all, in the language of the Mishnah, in Nedarim, pretty much all non-Jewish people are called Bnei Noach. Now, whether that's talking about the way that the term was used at that time when that Mishnah was written, or in general, because it's in the context of if someone takes an oath to say that he is swearing off any benefit from Bnei Noach, the Mishnah there, the earlier part of the Talmud, there says that such a person is prohibited from all Gentiles but permitted to Jews, which at face value doesn't make sense because Jews are also the children of Noah, and yet nonetheless that's pretty much what we have, is that this term B'nai Noach, which we children of Noah, which we often called Noahide, it means non-Jews and does not mean Jews. That it's whatever that means, and it would seem that that's in the parlance. And as far as this question of swearing off, that's just a general idea, because that's in the tractate Nedarim about taking vows, and so that's basically talking about how we define different things. Meaning, and in the context of that chapter, we see that they generally are discussing various terms and defining the terms. Another example would be those who eat garlic. That would be the Jews and the Samaritans as well. Those who rest on the Sabbath are both Jews and Samaritans. Those who make pilgrimage to Jerusalem are only the Jews and not the Samaritans. Examples like that. So the simplest answer, the most general answer, is that all non-Jewish people are called Noahides, and that's it. Now, the next question that people have, though, are which groups are keeping the 7 laws of Noah? That's different than who are the children of Noah, who are the observant Noahides. And the question comes down to what is the main thing that we are concerned with? Is it observance, or is it theology? Is it ideology? What are we concerned with here? And for the most part, the big question that is which groups are not idolaters. That's really the question that comes down to. Which groups is it only those who accept our ideology and theology? Or could other groups also not be called idolaters? And in that sense, really, the term that we're looking for is not necessarily B'nai Noach, Noahides, but rather, at least in one sense, Chasidei Umos Ha'olam, the pious among the nations, the righteous Gentiles. Some use a kind of cute term because it says Chasidei, so it means Chasidim, so they say Hasidic Gentiles. not necessarily in the sense of Hasidic Jews, although there are Hasidic Gentiles who have devotions to Rebbes the way Hasidic Jews do, or other types of ideas that adopt the Hasidic philosophy among certainly the identified Noahide community. But still, nonetheless, do we use that term, Hasidei Umos HaOlam, only to apply to non-idolaters? That's another question. According to Maimonides, so only people who are not idolaters and who keep the 7 laws of Noah, all 7, because they were commanded by God at Mount Sinai to Moses, as was revealed publicly through national revelation, are called Hasidei Umos HaOlam. That's the opinion of Maimonides. Is that to be called this righteous Gentile, you basically have to accept Judaism as your faith, if not as your religion. Meaning faith is a matter of ideology and belief, theology, but not as religion, meaning that you're not bound. Religios means to be bound to something, that we're not bound religious, that a non-Jewish person is not bound religiously to the practices of Judaism. So it's an orthodoxy without Jewish orthopraxy, because the person is not Jewish, so he's not bound by that practice. That is probably the most strict or minimalist approach of who would be a righteous Gentile, is basically only someone who believes in the Jewish faith and does their best to keep the 7 laws of Noah. The next more liberal approach is that the other Abrahamic religions could also be called essentially a type of Noahide. That's a more liberal approach. And the less liberal of the two approaches within that is that Islam is kosher because their theology is strictly monotheistic. Perhaps it could say the same thing about Unitarians and Jehovah's Witnesses. Essentially, that those, and as long as they're keeping the 7 laws of Noah and not worshiping idols, but not necessarily doing so because Moses commanded it, but they're within the realm of what is proper. Although some of the Unitarians believe in abortion and homosexuality, so they wouldn't be keeping the 7 laws of Noah, the more liberal Unitarians. But the I guess the old-fashioned Unitarians, which don't really exist anymore, the original Unitarians, would be considered within that realm as quote-unquote Noahides. But Trinitarian Christians and Mormons, who are essentially polytheistic, would not, or henotheistic, although an argument could be made that we're all henotheistic. Anybody who believes in the existence of angels and demons and so forth could theoretically, and veneration of saints and things like that, could possibly be within that realm. But nonetheless, for the most part, we don't. There are those who would say that no, the Trinitarian Christians are also essentially monotheist. So that would be the next more liberal view. Another more liberal view could be that perhaps the non-Abrahamic faiths, Buddhism that doesn't really have a theology, and Hinduism, the monotheistic and maybe atheistic branches of Hinduism, could theoretically be acceptable according to that view. And then the most liberal view, which is actually the view of Rashi in his commentary on the book of Malachi, is that really all religious Gentiles are Hasidei Umos HaOlam, even if they are not Noahides, meaning that piety is looked at not so much about the theological, but more about the practical. And so as long as a person is a good person and is a religious person, it doesn't even matter what religion they are, because Malachi says, from the rising of the sun to the setting thereof, great is my name among the nations, says the Lord. And every place where they're offering an offering, it's to my name, it's a pure oblation, in Malachi 1:11 et al. So therefore, according to that understanding, all of the idols are just merely avatars of the one divinity. And there are views like that. I've heard neo-pagans, Wiccans express that belief, that they believe that there's really only one divinity, but it expresses itself in different cultures in different ways. And that would be essentially how Rashi and really the Gemara and Menachos, so Chazal, understand this term Chasidei Umos Olam. That when Rashi uses that term, at least in some versions of Rashi, not every version prints that. So then we have that most liberal view that really any good person could be considered a righteous Gentile, and so this question of being Noahide or not would then therefore come down to only those who self-identify as Noahides, meaning those who, which goes back to what the Rambam says. There's another term that we have of Ger Toshav, the resident alien, the resident stranger. Someone similar to someone in America who has a visa, they're here legally, they're a legal resident, but they are not a citizen. That term, although people want to resurrect that, really only applies when the Jubilee is in force, which means when the majority of the Jewish people are residing in the Holy Land. That hasn't happened since the time of Hezekiah, when the 10 lost tribes were taken away. In the Second Temple time, there was no Jubilee year. And so this concept of the resident alien, of the Ger Toshav, does not apply, hasn't applied for close to 3,000 years. And essentially all we really have today, as Chazal say, is all we have today is the Ger Tzedek. We don't have the Ger Toshav. The only type of Ger is the proselyte, is the convert, the full convert who converts to Judaism, the person who was not born Jewish and became Jewish, and that is the only Ger that we have today. And so there's a fellow, David Katz, has a whole Ger movement saying that essentially the Ger Toshav movement, and that's halachically wrong, because there is no such thing as Ger Toshav. The most there can be is Chasidei Umos Olam. And really, the truth is, if you really get into the Ikar Adin and everything, because there's a question as to whether or not the 7 laws of Noah even really apply today, whether, and that's coming from the polemics of the time of when that was stated, more than a general idea, and my understanding of it, meaning it probably would not apply today when the Gentile world is much more pious and good than it was in the ancient times, in the times of ancient Rome, where there were no human rights and there was a lot of persecutions, and so therefore there was a broad brush that was painted, and that's why you have a lot of very negative terms, negative expressions you find in the Talmud about Gentiles. That's in the context of the time when that was stated, and it's not to be understood or applied in any way today, but rather it's a historical polemic that is no longer even accurate in any way. So with that being said, there's much more to say, that essentially, when you say Noahides, I would say that term Noahides applies really, as I see it, to people who self-identify as Noahides. They don't practice any other religion. They believe only in the religion of Judaism, in the faith of Judaism, rather, and follow the 7 laws of Noah. As far as the other religions, it doesn't, in English it doesn't make sense to call them Noahides. I think maybe to just call them children of Noah makes more sense, because that is what our sages really said. But as far as being righteous Gentiles, you can have righteous Gentiles from any religion, and it seems from the Bible that God doesn't judge negatively people from other religions just based on their religion, especially if that's what they were raised with and they are essentially trying to worship God of their understanding. God accepts that in His mercy. I had another question about this, which we'll make a separate video about, but that's pretty much the answer that we have there. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you all later. I know this might not have been so clear, but that's pretty much the answer. Is that either everybody is a Noahide or just Noahides are Noahides. That's kind of, but even if only Noahides are Noahides, everyone can be righteous and good. Everybody's holy, everybody's good, as long as you don't murder innocent people. That seems to be the biggest issue, is murdering innocent people. I mean, if they're not innocent, it's probably not even murder, but that's really criminal killing, murder, not war killing, not executing criminals, not self-defense, but murder. That's the real worst crime, more than idolatry in a certain sense, and even more than a lot of these other sins that we do have to take seriously. But I'm just saying, as far as things that are out of our control, meaning how much would this society, theft and murder are the two big ones that society really pushes. And I've had people ask, if we're concerned with the 7 laws of Noah, why are we, why don't we get involved in trying to ban idolatry? And because there's a difference between idolatry and murder, theft, and certain types of sexual sins as well, particularly officializing them, putting a stamp of approval, ceremonializing the things that are wrong, incestuous or homosexual or other things, certainly between two men. Between two women, it's maybe more of a gray area for non-Jews. But still, nonetheless, it doesn't really serve society. But then, there are other issues that people, and that doesn't mean we hate people who choose to identify based on these proclivities and so forth. Because we have a different idea, and we can respect to a certain extent that they have a different idea. But when we're given a vote, when we're given a choice, I think that should be part of, it shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. Like, I know a lot of people, like, they're only issue is Israel, and I think that's a little wrong, especially for an American to be obsessed with another country. So it's essentially what we're dealing with here. So I wouldn't say that should be the only issue, but it could be. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Like, share, subscribe, comment.